car.
Did you notice how they put every single person in the wrong spot? The entire pool had to come this way. Like, was anybody thinking about this at all at any point?
Hey, and when You are watching our special digital coverage from Uvalde. This is live coverage from our cameras on the ground. A short time ago, President Joe Biden and the First Lady arrived in this town where 6 days ago, 19 children and 2 teachers were killed by a gunman inside Robb Elementary. I'm Lauren Tellerico. Right now, the president is visiting the memorial outside the school, paying his respects to the victims. After this, he'll attend a church service and then meet with the victims' families and survivors. Then early this evening, the president is scheduled to meet with first responders. He arrived in Uvalde a short time ago. He was met by Governor Greg Abbott as well as the mayor of Uvalde. You can, of course, imagine what a difficult time this is for that community. Let's go ahead and just listen in and watch as the president tries to comfort this grieving community. Again, you are watching live from our cameras in Uvalde, where President Biden and the First Lady just arrived a short time ago to honor the victims killed this past Tuesday in the Robb Elementary School massacre. You can see he's joined by Governor Greg Abbott. Also, I know the mayor of Uvalde is there as well. 21 people were killed on Tuesday, including 19 children and 2 teachers. Throughout the week, we have learned so much more information about what unfolded inside that school on Tuesday, facts that have horrified the nation and really the world. I know Anayeli Ruiz and Adam Bennett are in Uvalde today. They are bringing us the important but devastating stories of the lives lost and also holding public officials accountable. Adam Bennett has been there for several days now, and he's really been able to see this unfold. Adam, are you there? Can you hear me this morning?
Yeah, Lauren, I have you loud and clear. We are here in the main town square of Uvalde. This is right by the courthouse where the main memorial has been set up. I want to get to that in just a minute, but actually about 5 minutes ago, we just watched the motorcade, the presidential motorcade, drive by right down the main street through town. A lot of people were lining the streets, of course, journalists, but also a lot of people here in town taking photos, taking video, live streaming, just wanting to see that moment in action. They're, of course, heading to Sacred Heart Catholic Church. That is where the President and First Lady will be heading for that 12 o'clock Mass today. I'm told some of the victims and survivors of this attack will be in attendance. And then, of course, the President will be meeting with them behind closed doors later. This is one of many memorials throughout town. The first one that really popped up was right outside Robb Elementary School, where that horrific attack happened. That memorial is still there. The president, of course, visited that this morning, but now there's very limited access, police tape. When people come by to leave things, flowers, etc., they have to hand it over to a state trooper or a law enforcement official behind the lines, and then they'll go place it over here. But this memorial here in the town square, looks like some more law enforcement activity here. A lot of different departments from all over the state of Texas have been helping out with traffic control during this, during the motorcade. It looks like some more heading that way right now. Here in the town square, this has really become where people are coming mainly to leave mementos. We've seen flowers, we've seen balloons, teddy bears, people, when they were able to, writing messages on the 21 crosses behind me. But now these memorials, as the days have gone on, have grown so large that you really can't get access to write on the crosses anymore. There's not really space, but people continue to come by today and leave flowers, mementos. I met one man just a short time ago who drove up from Corpus Christi, several hours away. He just said he wanted to pay his respects. He was a Marine. He says one of the sons of the victims was also a Marine. He felt that kinship with him, and so he wanted to be here to be a part of that and pay his respects. Throughout the days, though, here, we've really seen a cross-section of everybody, including, celebrities. Meghan Markle was here the other day, all the way down to the people affected by this tragedy, families, friends, survivors. Many of them will pause in front of the memorials here. They'll look solemnly, they'll hug each other, they'll pray. A lot of people spend a lot of time here, maybe 20, 30 minutes sometimes, just reflecting on that horrific attack that happened this past Tuesday. And we've also met a lot of people, though, stepping up to help. That's been the other thing we've seen out here, in addition to people directly impacted, people in the town who are also going through a great deal. Because remember, this is a town of 15,000, and pretty much everybody we've talked to out here has some kind of connection to the elementary school, to the people who were killed or injured in that attack or survived it. So there's a level of trauma that I think everybody in this town is feeling. But we've seen people come from all over the country. We met people from, you name it, Chicago, Miami, all over the state. Everybody wants to come here, number one, to pay their respects, but also to see if there's something they can do to help. We've seen people offering free food, free water to people out here, even to us. The reception that we've seen from people has just been incredible in this town, especially for us being here for something so tragic. But I get this feeling that, we remember the phrase, of course, in Houston strong, right, after Hurricane Harvey, and that motto has stuck. Well, now it's Uvalde strong. We've seen that all over signs around town, near other memorials, on, billboards for businesses. There's really a sense of unity in this town, people coming together during the darkest time, no doubt, that this town has ever seen, and one of the darkest for this country, to really try to lift each other up. And I think right now that's really what's getting a lot of people through.
Adam, what you couldn't just see because it was on our screens, and I know you're a few blocks away from that memorial outside the school, is President Biden and the First Lady visiting that memorial, touching the faces of the children who were killed that day. There are the crosses that are up. There are pictures of every victim that was taken on Tuesday, and to see the President and the First Lady touch those photographs of these children, these lives lost that should not have been, it really, it's quite something. Adam, you have been there for 4 days. You've been watching this unfold. How are you doing? You're dealing with these families, you're hearing these stories. Can you just talk to me from a personal angle right now? What is it like to be in that community?
Well, it's very difficult, and with a disclaimer that this is nowhere even in the same galaxy as to what these people directly impacted by this tragedy are feeling, and just the people in town too. Of course, again, a lot of people here do have a connection with those victims, but it's tough. I've been doing this for 13 years almost now, and this is the most difficult story I've ever had to cover, hands down. Of course, anytime you're dealing with a mass shooting, that's horrific, but you're also, when you factor in just the sheer number of people killed, and of course the age of the children here, and then I've talked to my photographer about this, I've talked to other news crews around here, and we all kind of are having the same reaction, where it's like, this was already a really, really tragic story to cover as it was, right? And I think when we first got here, Thursday now, the days are kind of blending together, but Thursday, it was, it was like this feeling of sadness. And but I think after that press conference on Friday, when we heard the head of DPS admit that the police officers on scene should have gone in sooner, and we heard the timeline of all of those the sequence of events, the kids making the 911 calls from inside the classroom, I think that's like, we thought it couldn't get even worse, and it did, you know, I mean, for everybody involved. But if we're just talking about us for now on a smaller scale, you know, I think that like sadness almost turned to like a sick feeling in your stomach. And I've talked to a lot of other journalists here that have covered that, you know, just the fact that now we learned that something could have been done, and officials are admitting that. And now we're learning more and more about what actually happened that day. So, I mean, it's really, really difficult. And it's sad to come out here and see the families grieving. And, you know, you want to tell their story, but you also don't want to be intrusive and trying to navigate that and walk that tightrope, you know, giving them the platform to share the story of their loved ones if they want to, but also not trying to get in the way of them grieving. So it's difficult. But again, I think the one thing that has been a bright light here is just the way that everybody has really, really come together. And there's this sense of like, we're not going to let this knock us down. We're going to stay positive. And I'll tell you a story from yesterday. We were outside of the church where President Biden and the First Lady are right now. At the time when we went over there, we didn't know they were going to be coming there initially. We just went there because we wanted to do a story on faith in the community and the role that faith is playing after this tragedy. And just kind of a quick rundown for people that don't know, this is a town of about 15,000. It's mostly Hispanic. So, you know, the Roman Catholic Church is a big deal in this community. Sacred Heart Church, where the President and First Lady are, is the main and I believe the only Catholic church in town from what I could find. But we went out there early, and, you know, and even before and while the Secret Service detail were going through the grounds and, you know, getting the lay of the land and making sure everything was safe for the President and First Lady's visit, we saw, I mean, it had to have been 25 or 30 volunteers just landscaping. I mean, they were power washing the sidewalk, they were blowing leaves, they were edging the grass, even actually the people living across the street and around the church. I think a lot of people, of course, they told us they really wanted things to look good for the president's visit, but also this was about honoring the victims too. They wanted this, a lot of the funerals, I'm told, are going to be at that church. So they wanted this to look as beautiful and as pristine as possible. And it was their way of honoring those victims. And also, I talked to one of the survivors. It was a teacher at Robb Elementary who was in a different classroom, but very close to where the shooting was happening. And she said, I just told my kids to pray. I just told them to pray so they would stay quiet. And she said she thinks that helped her and her kids get through this. And she said she's had a really, really hard time, as you can imagine, the last few days. I mean, just unimaginable what she's going through. And she said she wanted to be out there at that church yesterday to help clean up, to help it look nice. It was her way of just finding a way to move forward, but also honor those kids who were there and who lost their lives. So I think people are really, really trying to come together and take a positive next step and try to rise above this and move forward in the best way that they can, even though, of course, this town will never be the same. Never.
It will never be the same. You know, Adam, heartbreak meets anger and so many unanswered questions still. And I want to tell you that CBS News was reporting that the school district's police chief, who made the call to hold officers back that day, now has a guard stationed outside his house for protection, according to CBS News. Now, of course, the timeline provided by officials on Thursday, which Adam, you just mentioned, shows, and this is where the anger comes in, okay? This is where the anger on top of the heartbreak, on top of the shock comes in. So officials on Thursday said that several first responders waited in the hallway for more than an hour, perhaps, before going into the classroom where the gunman was barricaded as people inside the classroom repeatedly called 911 asking for help. And so here we go. 11:33 is when we're told the gunman first entered the school. Got there a little before then, but entered the school at 11:33. The report of the first officers arriving 11:35, so just 2 minutes later. The gunman was not killed until 12:50. So that is where a lot of this anger is coming in. Anger woven in with heartbreak, and there are just so many emotions to contend with. It's just heartbreaking. And right now, the reason why we don't have the video, the live coverage of President Biden and the First Lady is because we're told they are on their way to the Catholic Church, which is where he's going to be attending Mass. Adam, have you gotten that feeling? Have you felt the anger along with the heartbreak, just the conflicting emotions?
Yes, absolutely, Lauren. So on Thursday, I interviewed the father of one of the victims, Annabelle Rodriguez, 10-year-old little girl, student in that classroom, loved baking, loved gymnastics, wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up. Her dad reached out to us and wanted to tell her story. He wanted the world to know about his daughter and, just incredible little girl. He didn't want to talk much about that day, about the shooting, but he did say he was angry. He was so angry that he had to drive out of Uvalde for a couple of days and get out to the country where his parents have a house and just try to work out that anger and deal with that as best as possible. And he said, it helped a little bit to get some distance from this place. And when he came back on Thursday for the first time since then, that was when he wanted to talk to us. But he said repeatedly, yeah, I'm angry. That was about the extent of that. The next day was when that DPS press conference happened. And that's when we heard, just one bombshell after another about what actually happened that day, the response, the timeline. And so, again, I didn't want to be intrusive, but if he wanted to react to that, I wanted to be sure to include the family's perspective. So I just sent him a text and he said, yeah, I want to talk. I'm really, really angry. And we did. And you could see the change in his demeanor from one day to the other. Thursday I don't know how he was even able to form words. It was incredible just the way he was holding himself together. But Friday, the next day, it was different. You could it just seemed like almost like a 1,000-yard stare, just very distant, lot harder time forming words. And he just said, I think that stuck with me is they're supposed to protect and serve, and they're just sitting outside the classroom while our kids are being murdered. And bottom line, I think with anger, there's also this desire for accountability. I heard that from him. He said someone's got to be held accountable. Also out here at the memorial, we interviewed the brother of Xavier Lopez. And he told me the same thing. He said, it's ridiculous, man. That was a direct quote. He says, it's ridiculous, man. They really, they failed their duty. They didn't do what they were supposed to. He was really, really angry too, and he wanted to see something being done. So I think with that anger looking forward, now people that are impacted by this tragedy really want to see some level of accountability for the person or people that made these decisions that kept those officers from going into that classroom sooner to stop the shooter.
We all certainly hope that happens, that whoever needs to be held accountable is held accountable. You're looking at a live feed right now. Adam, we just saw another reporter jump on the screen, so I just wanted to explain to the audience what's going on. We have a pool feed with several of our other stations right now because President Biden and the First Lady are in town honoring the victims of the Robb Elementary School shooting that happened this past Tuesday. 19 students and 2 teachers were killed by a gunman when he went inside that school and barricaded himself inside a classroom. We've been talking to Adam Bennett, who has been in Uvalde. This is the 4th day he's covering this tragedy, for a lack of a better word, walking us through the emotions that families have been dealing with, the community has been dealing with. So many people are wanting to fix this, which you can't, and are wanting to help. I do want to say, Adam, we have so many resources listed on our website, KHOU.com. It's so easy to feel helpless right now, but there are some things you can do to try to lift up these families and help them. We have those resources for you on KHOU.com. Make sure you are donating to legitimate sources, because unfortunately we do know when a tragedy happens, the scammers come out too. So we have verified the funds that you can donate to make sure that your money and your help is going to the right place. I also want to mention that there is free mental health being provided to anybody in that community who asks for it. Earlier this week, Governor Abbott said food, water, other resources will also be provided for free to the families of the victims and survivors and to people in that community. Right now, you're taking a live look at the motorcade. This is President Biden and the First Lady. This morning, they arrived in Uvalde. Their first stop was outside Robb Elementary School, where they visited the memorial outside of the 19 children and 2 teachers who were killed on Thursday. Now they are heading to attend a mass at Sacred Heart Catholic Church in Uvalde. We're told that after that mass, the president will meet with the families of the victims and survivors. Following that meeting, he'll meet with first responders. That's going to happen at about 5:45. He'll then leave town tonight. We've been speaking with our Adam Bennett, who's been there for several days, about the heartbreak, the anger, the confusion that has plagued the small town of Uvalde, Texas, where several days ago most of the world didn't even know it existed. And now it has become the centerpiece for talking points on how we move forward as a country. It's just a tragedy. Adam Bennett, are you still there? Are you able to talk to us again?
I am, yeah. Actually, we're just watching the motorcade go by again. Yeah.
How close? How close
here.
are you? How close are you to the church where where President Biden is heading?
I'm going to ballpark it and say about half a mile. I helped look it up for somebody who wanted to walk there, and Google Maps said it was about a 13-minute walk. So let's call it about half a mile. Very close.
Okay. You said you've been seeing people from all over the country coming to this town. Is there a feeling that this town is a little bit overwhelmed by all the people that are there, or does it seem like this kind of support from strangers is what they need?
I think it's more of the latter, Lauren. I mean, of course, I don't want to speak for everybody in this town. I'm sure there are people that just wish, the media and all the attention and everything would go away, and that's totally understandable. But I can tell you, unfortunately, we've seen a lot of these mass shootings in this country and other tragic events. I've covered a number of them, and usually by day 3 or 4, you can feel the town kind of turning against the media presence, all the out-of-towners that are coming in. They're ready for you to leave, and I mean, of course, nobody can fault them. But here, I mean, it's day 6 if we're including Tuesday, day 4 that I've been here, and I haven't felt that. I mean, just last night we were wrapping up a live shot outside of the church where the president and first lady are now. And one of the church volunteers came out and offered us, food and water and said it was free and, help yourselves. And I don't remember ever seeing that, at least maybe this far out, from a tragic story like this that I've covered. So, I mean, it really has been incredible just to see the support. Beyond free food, free water, we've seen people coming in with therapy dogs. There was a group from the Houston area that came in that I was told about. I met a woman from Cleveland, Ohio that had a dog here, one of the therapy dogs. And actually, my photographer Lee captured this image the other day here at the memorial. It was the grandmother of one of the victims, Amory Jo Garza, and she was sitting on the bench in front of the memorial for her granddaughter. She was clutching a teddy bear, and at the same time, she was petting one of those therapy dogs. I mean, I can only speak from an outside perspective, but it appeared to be helping, at least a little bit in that moment of incredible grief. Man, what else? We've seen, yesterday when we were doing a story on faith, we left the church for a little bit just to go grab a sandwich really quickly. And on the main drag here through town where you just saw the motorcade go by, there were people holding up signs that said, honk for prayer. And so I think a lot of people are really trying to lift each other up through faith as well, and not just bringing those resources. And you mentioned mental health care too, and I wanted to mention something. Of course, there's the governor's line that he announced. I know we have that resource on our website. I'm sorry, I don't have the number offhand. But I also interviewed the CEO of Catholic Charities Archdiocese of San Antonio yesterday, and he talked about how his organization, their district includes Uvalde, how they've been helping a lot of the survivors and the victims' families, with therapists being the main thing. And what they're doing is they're bringing in trained therapists and counselors that worked with the victims of the Sandy Hook massacre. Those are therapists that, unfortunately have a specialty and know how to better handle a situation like that versus someone that maybe hasn't done that before. And so they really wanted to bring the most top of the line people who had the closest experience to something like this to bring in to help. And one more interesting thing from my conversation with the CEO there of Catholic Charities San Antonio, of course President Biden is Catholic, that's well known. And I asked him, I asked the CEO, is there anything that you wanted to hear from President Biden when he comes today, or the First Lady? And he said, yeah, he said, I really hope he gives a message of love, of hope, of dignity, and of respect. And he says, I think if we can do that, that'll really, really help the families out that we're working with. And he said that the thing that he really hoped was that the conversation around the president's visit here didn't turn political. He said this is not a political issue right now. This is a humanitarian issue.
Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people feel that way, Adam, and a lot of people don't. A lot of people say today is the day to have those conversations. Yeah. And then, of course, you have people saying, no, it's not. It's just a topic that I wish we didn't have to cover, and we do. And you said, we have these mental health experts who helped with Sandy Hook. Of course, another horrible mass shooting. It's so sad that we do have these kinds of experts, that we have to have these kinds of experts, but I'm sure glad for that community that they're there, because God knows they'll need it. Right now, this is our live pool camera that is outside of the church. Right now, President Biden and the First Lady are about to attend a mass at Sacred Heart Catholic Church in Uvalde. Of course, this is the town where 19 children, fourth graders, and 2 teachers were killed on Tuesday after a gunman walked into the school, barricaded himself inside a classroom, and opened fire over a long time, several minutes at least. Right now, they're attending Mass. After that, they'll meet with families of the victims and survivors. And then this evening, they'll be meeting with first responders. They'll leave town tonight and head back to the East Coast. Once the president goes inside this church, our digital coverage right here will end, but of course we'll be continuing to follow this all day on air. Let's go ahead and I'm just going to pause for a moment to see if we can see the president and First Lady leaving the motorcade. Before this, they were outside Robb Elementary School, which is where the shooting took place. There are several, that's where the original memorial site was set up. Really touching moment there when the First Lady was touching the faces and the pictures of the children and teachers who were killed on Tuesday. These are real people, beautiful little children who were taken much too soon. Never should have happened. It never should. And God, I hope it never happens again. I think we all feel that way. But again, this is our live pool coverage from the ground in Uvalde. We've had crews there all week, and Adam Bennett, as he just mentioned, it's been a difficult week covering these stories. Of course, he says his heartbreak pales in comparison, of course, to the families that are there. But I just want to thank him and all of our other reporters, Anieli Ruiz, who have been there covering these stories with poise and grace and empathy, which is what these families need. These children deserve to have their stories told. These children deserve this problem to be fixed to make sure this never happens again, whatever that may mean. Small Texas town, now known to the world for the horror that unfolded last week. We'll bring you continuing coverage from Uvalde throughout the day on KHOU.com and on air during our 5:30 and 10 p.m. newscasts.